Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Stitch Sessions. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Karen and I love all things to do with crafting with crochet. In today's tutorial, we are going to work on this fun autumn oval placemat. So I've had a request actually to create this in an oval shape. For those of you that have seen my solid granny square placemat that I did about 2 summers ago, I know a lot of you really enjoyed that project, and I had a special request from Frederick who asked if I could make a similar placemat using the oval shaping. And so that is what we are doing today, working the oval shape. It is still going to be a solid project, and I'm actually using the linked double crochet stitch for this project to create a little bit more of a denser fabric. And that's it. We're using 1 stitch, keeping it simple so that you can understand the structure of creating an oval. And many of you who have seen my Easy Breezy beach bag project, the bottom of that bag starts using the oval shaping. Now, some of you have been asking me a few more detailed questions about it. I think this tutorial will help to clarify the basic principles of crocheting the oval shape. Now, this is using the double crochet height. In the Easy Breezy beach bag, we used single crochets. So there will be a little bit of variance, but hopefully you'll get the base idea of how to create your oval. And at the very end, we just added a very fine little detail by adding a little bit of white yarn for an accent and then using the V-stitch to create a lacy border. So these don't take very long to whip up, but as long as you've got a couple of stitch markers and you understand the basic concept, you are good to go. So let's get to the materials we're going to need for stitching up our autumn oval placemat. Okay, so the yarn I'm using for this project is the Peyton's Grace yarn. It's mercerized cotton, 100% mercerized cotton, and I adore using this yarn for anything home decor related, especially things that will come in close contact with moisture and or heat. And I love the mercerized cotton because it just gives this beautiful, lovely sheen to it. And this color, in case you're interested, is Fiesta. I just thought it was perfect for an autumn project. And these skeins come in 50-gram balls, which contain 136 yards or 125 meters. To create my oval placemat, I needed 1.5 of these. So 1 and a little bit. So if you're making a set of 2, let's say, you would definitely need to get 3 of these skeins. If you're making a set of 4, then you're going to need about 6. Okay. I am also using, and I don't know where I put it, but I am also using the Peyton's Grace in Snow, which is the white color that I use for the little accent there. And 1 skein is plenty because we're just using it for a little trim portion. Okay, so that is what I'm using there. For the hook, I am going to be using a 4mm hook. Whoops, where is it? There we go. Which is also known as a G or a size 6. And now they recommend using a 3.75mm hook, but I like using the 4 just because I find for this particular project, the stitches sit a little bit nicer for my liking. Do what's comfortable for you. I sometimes will play with the hook size. Sometimes I'll go up half a size or I'll go down half a size. If you are a really super loose crocheter, then follow along with the recommendation. If you are a super tight crocheter, then I would recommend you going up to a 4.5, maybe even a 5 if you're that tight of a crocheter. But the stitch we're creating is meant to be a denser fabric, so being a tight crocheter in this instance will probably serve you well. Now, the other thing you want to make sure to have on hand is have a few stitch markers. You want at least 4 stitch markers to mark your spots as you go along. As always, make sure you have a pair of scissors and a yarn needle to sew in any of your ends at the end. So let's get started on our placemat. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot onto our hook here. And we're going to start with a chain of 22 chains. So we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, once you have 19 chains, you're going to have something that looks like this. So what we're going to do, because we are using the linked double crochet stitch for this project, anytime I have 3 chains, a lot of times we would say 3 chains is going to count as a double crochet. For the most part in this project, the chain 3 will not count as anything. It'll just be there to help give us a little bit of structure to create our linked double crochet stitch. So that's what gives us that denser fabric, because the double crochet stitches are linked closer together and creates a nice little fabric there. So what we're going to do is, the idea here is we normally would say, okay, skip the first 3 chains and into the 4th chain place a double crochet stitch. So we're going to do something similar, but we are going to place a linked double crochet stitch. So what we're going to do is into the 2nd chain from the hook. So remember, we never count the loop that's on the hook. And be careful there. See how that one came up, started getting a bit tight? You want them to stay nice and even. So let me just do that one again. Okay, so I have 1, 2. Into the 2nd chain, I'm just going to pull up a loop. Okay, just like that. And now I'm going to go down into the next 2 chains. I'm going to count 1 and 2. And into that chain, I'm going to pull up another loop. So I have 3 loops on the hook now. I'm going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 like I would with a normal double crochet stitch. So now I have 2 loops left. Then I'm going to yarn over and pull through the other 2. That is officially my first stitch. Okay, so right now it just really almost looks like nothing. It's like a jimble jamble here. So if I just push that off to the side, this is actually the stitch we've created. See, the chain 3 is along the side here, and that's just to give us a little bit of height. As we work subsequent rounds, this will become more prevalent to you. Okay, so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you started on the first 4 rounds just to kind of show you how the shape goes. And then once you get the hang of it, all subsequent rounds are just basically a repeat of that. So let's get started here. So we've done 1 stitch into this stitch here. We're now going to proceed to place 4 more stitches in here. And we're going to use the linked double crochet stitch. So now we always want to do is find that bar, that vertical bar that linked your chain 3 into this stitch here, and you're going to insert your hook. You're going to pull up a loop. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go back into that same stitch to pull up your next loop. Then you yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the second 2. So you're just resolving it like a regular double crochet stitch. So you should be able to see that. See how they're linking to each other? So we're going to do that again. Insert into that vertical bar there, pull up a loop, then go back into the same chain. Don't worry, it's going to stretch a little bit. That's going to be okay. That's normal. Then you resolve it like a regular double crochet stitch. So I've now done 3 of those. I need to do this 2 more times. So I pull through there, go back into that very big stitch there. And then I need 1 more. Always go in through the bar first. That's going to be the thing that you need to get used to. So easy to stop paying attention and do a regular double crochet stitch, but you want to link these guys together. So now I have 5 of these. So I'm just going to stretch this out a little bit here. This gape here, because we've really stretched this chain, it will relax over time. So don't worry, that is normal that happens. So we now have 5 stitches. And what I will do here now is I would start getting into the habit of placing my stitch marker here. Okay, so right there. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we've got our 5 stitches at the end. So this is our first rounded side. So this is what we call it, the short side. This would be what you would consider your short side if you were creating a rectangle. Just so happens that this end will be rounded out. So into each of the next 17 stitches, you are going to place one linked double crochet. So again, into that vertical bar to pull up your first loop. So instead of yarning over, we're just going into that bar to pull up our next loop. Now we're going into the next chain to pull up our next loop, and you know the drill. Pull through 2 and pull through 2. Okay, and again through the bar into the next chain, and this is our linked double crochet stitch. So I've done 2. I'm going to do 15 more. When I get to the end, I should have 1 stitch left, so I will meet you there. Okay, so I have now done 17 linked double crochet stitches. So my work is looking like this, and I have this little, looks like a little kind of snail's edge here. So that stitch marker was the end of these 5 stitches. Now we've done 17 stitches, and we should have 1 little chain left there. So what we're going to do into this last chain is we are going to place 5 stitches into that one to create the other end of our oval. Okay, so we're going to begin as usual in through that crossbar and into that very last chain. That's why it's so important never to chain too tightly at the start. So this is the first of our 5. Now what I'm going to get you guys into the habit of doing right away is get a stitch marker. And you're always going to mark the beginning and the end of your rounded end. So this is the first of 5. So I just wanted to make sure that I marked it right away. Oops. So always in between your markers, you should always have 17 stitches. So this would be down the long side of your work. As you go through subsequent rounds, sometimes these markers will shift over 1 or shift back 1 depending on how your rounded end is worked. So as you change the spot where you place your decreases, and you don't really change, you just shift as you grow, this marker sometimes ends up moving over 1 or back 1. So always at the end of it all, between the stitch markers, you should always have 17 stitches. And you'll see as we do a couple of rounds coming up. So I've done 1. I need to do 4 more into the same stitch here. Back into that same stitch. So there's 2. There's the third one going in. Okay, now I'm going to place the 4th right into that same stitch. And then we have 1 more to go for our 5th. So pick up through that bar. And this one may or may not stretch as much as the other one did because you're close to that slip knot at the beginning. And you can see that it really just helps us go right around the side there. And now we're going to work along the bottom of our chain. So we've got something that looks like that. So now you've got 1 rounded end. You've got 17 stitches along the long side. You've got the other rounded end. And because we've just finished doing the 5th stitch in our rounded end, we're just going to take another stitch marker here and we're going to mark it. So I like to create these types of shapes by always marking the beginning and the end of the rounded end. So you're always going to have 5. So in this case, you have 5 stitches. The 1st and the 5th have a stitch marker. And as your work grows, you will always have 5 spots where you're increasing. You'll see that as we go along. So now what we're going to do is nice and easy. We're just going to continue placing 1 linked double crochet into each of the bottom of these stitches, which should be 17 stitches until we come back to our very first stitch that we worked. So that's all you're going to do now, is just place one stitch into each. Okay, so I've just come to the end here of my round, and I did an additional 17 stitches, which brings me right back to that very first area here, that very first stitch where we did the 5. Now this first one's going to be tricky to see because remember we did the chain 3 and then we linked it right away, so it's kind of hard to make heads nor tails of this jimble jamble. So here's what you do. See where you have that stitch marker there? That is the 5th stitch of our short round there. So we've got, so we just want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we can see this right here. We just insert our hook into the top there and we slip stitch to join our round. Okay, and that is the end of round number 1. Okay, if you want to, you can place a stitch marker here as well so that you can clearly delineate where your center is and then where your 2 ends are. I don't bother because this is always where I stop and start. So this already kind of has a marker on its own with the loop there, and it's always going to be in the same spot based on how we create this. So round number 1, because we had 17 stitches along the long side, so 17 on each side, that's 34 stitches plus an additional 5 and 5 on each stitch. So now we should have a total of 44 stitches at the end of round number 1. So let's now go on to round number 2. Okay, so we'll always begin each round by chaining 3, 1, 2, and 3. Into that second chain, you will pull up a loop, you'll insert, pull up a loop, and then right back into the same stitch here, you're going to insert your hook, pull up a loop, and resolve as usual. So remember, the chain 3 is never really going to count as anything. So this technically is the first of our next series of stitches. So now, anytime you come to your rounded end, you want to follow the same principles of crocheting a circle. So in the second round of a circle, we generally do an increase into every stitch. So in our case here, we have 5 stitches, which are going to become our 5 sections that we're going to increase. So we've done 1 stitch. That means we need to place 1 more stitch back into that same one. So you just go back in, find that vertical bar, and place another linked double crochet into the same stitch. Okay, so there we have an increase. So that's 2 stitches into 1. You can see the chain 3 is kind of hanging out here. We don't worry about that at all. And so you're going to do that in each of the next 4 stitches. You're going to place 2 linked double crochet stitches until you get to that stitch marker, including the stitch marker. Okay, then I go back again to place 1 more. Pretty straightforward. So where we had 5 stitches before, you're going to end up having 10 stitches around. Okay, so I have 8 stitches so far, so I've increased into the first 4, and my stitch marker is right here. So this is my 5th one. So I'm going to work 2 more stitches into that one. So this is our last increase. I'm just going to kind of squeeze in there. There's 1, and then there is the last one. So I always want to have these markers in the very first stitch and the very last stitch of my rounded side. So remember, the first one, we already know where it is. So I'm going to take this stitch marker out now, and I'm just going to replace it into the next round, and it's always the very last stitch. So I always remember that all the stitches between the markers is going to be 17 stitches. So you know what to do. You're now going to place 1 linked double crochet to each of the next 17 stitches, and then you're going to come across your next little rounded edge here. Okay, so I've finished my 17 stitches across, and I've now come to my stitch marker. So I'm going to do exactly what I did over here. I'm going to do 2 stitches into each stitch, including the stitch markers. So I'm going to take this one out. I'm going to do my first increase here. And just so that I never kind of make a mistake, I'm going to insert my hook and place the first stitch. And before I even finish that increase, I want to replace that stitch marker right away. And that way it reminds me that's the first stitch of the rounded end. And then I just continue and I go back and I do my increase. It's really important to pay attention to that because it's so easy to kind of take it out and then forget where you are. And if you don't count properly, then you can place the stitch marker in the wrong spot and then you'll get an oval that's kind of wonky. It happens all the time. Trust me, I've done it. So always make sure that you replace that marker. And again, I can't stress this enough. 17 is the magical number between the markers, okay? And it's pretty much the same thing. So now you're going to do 2, 2, 2, and 2 stitches in each. And remember to replace the stitch marker in the last stitch of the increase. So you will then have 10 stitches from this stitch marker all the way to and including this stitch marker, okay? Then you will continue placing 1 into each of the next 17 stitches, and I'll meet you at the end of round number 2 to talk about closing off our round there. Okay, so I've pretty much completed my second round, so you can really see the oval shape is very prominent now, okay? And so we're starting from essentially the center, and then we're building our oval out. So the most important thing now to also take into consideration is how you're going to join your rounds. So those of you that watched my Loops and Arrows throw blanket in our Life's a Beach crochet series, you know that I used this stitch and I worked in a similar type of motif. I used an arrow type of motif, which was not quite the oval, but we did work in the round, and I just simply used a slip stitch to join. Now you can do that by all means. So you can simply just go to the top of the first stitch. Remember, we're skipping this chain 3 altogether. You just go to the top of that stitch and slip stitch to join, and you've got your round joined there very nicely. So you can definitely do that. I'm trying my best to hide my seam. It's not always easy when you're working in projects like this. So that so far is not too bad. It's just as you build up, you may start to feel like the seam is showing. So I'm just going to show you another method that actually for this particular project, I actually didn't mind so much. I didn't like it for the Loops and Arrows blanket, but I don't mind so much with this one. So I'm still going to go in through that bar. And what I want to do is I want to find the bar in that very first stitch. See that right there? And I'm going to insert my hook in from the bottom there. And that is where I'm going to pull the loop through. It's as if I'm just going to do another stitch there. Pull it through this bar. And I have 2 loops on the hook, and now I go to the top of that stitch. I insert my hook, yarn over, and then I'm going to pull through that stitch and then through both of these loops. So you're slip stitching to join your round. And what this does is it really nestles the previous stitch into the first stitch, and it just creates the illusion that that link is going right across. So if you kind of put your work down a little bit or come from the back, from far, it's very hard to detect where your seam is. Now, of course, as you build up in subsequent rounds, you may, if you look closely, you'll be able to see it obviously, but the idea is to keep the fabric as uniformly dense as we possibly can, okay? So this is pretty much it, and this is how you're going to continue to grow your oval. Now, I am going to do 2 more rounds with you because I want to remind you of continuing those basic principles of your circle so that you always remember the increases where they need to be placed on the ends. So let's begin round number 3. Okay, so for round number 3, as always, we're going to start by chaining 3. 1, 2, and 3. and we're going to go into the second chain, pull up a loop, and then we're going to go back into that same stitch and place our linked, a link to itself, so to speak. Now, in the previous round, what we did is we placed an increase into every stitch. So we had 5 stitches, we placed an increase, we now have 10. By the way, I forgot to mention that at the end of round number 2, you're going to have 54 stitches. So essentially, with each round, you should increase the number of stitches by 10 because you're always increasing 5 on each side. So we have 54 stitches. So in this round, we are not increasing in every stitch. We are going to increase in every second stitch. So for this round, I'm just going to begin by placing 1 stitch first and then place an increase into the next. An individual stitch, an increase, 1 increase, 1 increase, 1 increase. So at the end of this side here, at the end of this first arch, I should now have 15 stitches in total. Okay, so I've done 1 and now I'm going to go through that bar. Don't forget that it's a linked, don't do the regular. So into the next stitch, I'm going to place 2. Back in again into the same stitch. There's 2. Okay, and this is the pattern I'm going to repeat. 1, 2, all the way to here. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you at the end of this arch. And this is my last increase here. And this is my 15th stitch. So now I have, like I said, 15. See how that's fanning out? So beautiful. Okay, so don't forget, take that stitch marker out. I know sometimes I repeat myself incessantly. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure people remember these important things because I know I forget them sometimes. So always replace the last stitch marker. And that is basically what you're going to do for round number 3. That's that arch there. Now 17 stitches. And then you're going to begin by placing 1 into this first stitch, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, exactly how you did it here. So if you start with an individual stitch, you have to start individually here, okay? And again, you should have 15 stitches. Make sure to replace that marker. And then 17 stitches, slip stitch to join, and then I'll meet up with you to take you through round number 4. Okay, round 3 is complete, and I now have 64 stitches all the way around. And I've just slip stitched, and we're ready to go on to round number 4, and then I'm pretty much going to set you loose. So I wanted to go up to round number 4 because I wanted to show you a little hack that I have for working on rounded projects. See, when you're working on circular motifs or projects, a lot of times, see, this circle looks beautiful and amazing. But as you get larger and larger, because the nature of how we place the increases, the tendency is to stack the increases on top of each other. When you do that and your work gets larger, that beautiful rounded shape starts creating points. And so to avoid the points, what I always do is I alternate whether I begin a round with an increase or just with the straight stitch. So you saw in the previous round our repeat, so for round number 3, our repeat was 1 stitch, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. In the next round, I'm actually going to begin with the increase, which is 2, and then in between each increase, now we're going to have 2 stitches, 2 single stitches. So you're going to see that as you increase the number of rounds, you will increase also the number of stitches between your increases. And just to make things more complicated for you, I like to alternate whether or not I begin with an increase. So you can look at it this way. In all of your even numbered rounds, begin with the increase, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then do my usual. I'm going to go into that second chain, and right where I slip stitched, I'm going to insert, do my first linked double crochet. And because I'm doing an increase into this stitch. I'm going to do another one right away into that same stitch. So I'm going to link those. And that's my first increase. Okay, so I've got 2 stitches there. Now I'm going to do 1 into each of the next 2. So I had an increase, and now I'm going to place 1 into the next. And then 1 into the next. Okay, so I've got 2 in this one, and then I have 1 and 1. So the next one is going to be an increase, which is 2. So you'll always have 5 increases somewhere in your arched end here. And so that's 5 is your magic number. Okay, so where we had 15 stitches in your arch, you're now going to have 20 stitches on each of your arches. So I just did 2, and now I'm going to do 1, oops, and then 1 into the next one. So I think you pretty much get the gist of this. Okay, so that's the pattern for round number 4. So I'm just going to finish this next arch, and then we'll chit chat about what you're going to do from here on out. Okay, so I'm just coming up to the end here. I've just done my last increase, and I've got 2 stitches left, which is perfect because my repeat calls for the fact that I'm going to place 1 into each of the next 2. So your marker really won't steer you wrong. Okay, now, like I said, in subsequent rows, you may notice that sometimes this may need to shift over, but for these first few rounds, pretty straightforward. Just like that. And I'm going to replace my stitch marker. Okay. So see, you can see how it's really growing. Look at how, I love how steady that arch is, right? And then we've got our long side, 17 stitches. And then you begin with the increase, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, etc., etc. So you'll have 20 on this end, okay? So at the end of round number 4, so you're going to go all the way around, you're going to slip stitch to join, you should have 74 stitches. So now I'm going to have, so remember I had 17 and 17, that gives me 34. And now I have 20 stitches on each end. So 34 plus 20 is 54, plus another 20 is 74. So you're going to keep building these rows just like this. And then your increases, just remember that you are always increasing the number of stitches between your increases. So in round number 4, we did 2 stitches in between your increases. So in round number 5, you're going to do 3 stitches between. Round number 6, you're going to do 4 between each increase, etc., etc., etc. I think you get the gist. You keep increasing the number of stitches. And your each round should increase by 10, right? Because we're increasing 5 and 5. I will leave a graphic up for you on the screen here, just as a little guide. Press pause when you're working on it, and I'll even leave a link to the timestamp. So, you know, you might put this down for a while and come back to it, and that way you'll be able to refer to the graphic, where it just basically is going to give you the basic gist of how many stitches you should have at the end of each round, just to kind of give you a little bit of a guide. Okay, and now it's pretty much going to just continue repeating in this fashion. So you are going to continue to do subsequent rounds until you have completed round number 18. And then once you've completed 18 rounds, you're going to see your work will really grow. Then we're going to come back in and use our white yarn to begin to create a little bit of a trim detail just before we do the final border. So press pause. It'll be a little while before I come back to you again, but when we do, we'll be almost done. So I'll see you at the end of round 18. Okay, so I have completed 18 rounds and my mat is looking like this, my placemat. And so it's now really taken on that oval shape and we're just ready to do that border detail. So this is where I'm going to introduce that white color and you only need a small amount for this. We're going to just add a little white detail and we're going to use single crochet stitches for this round. So this is round 19 we're going to do. And we are only going to do single crochet stitches. So what I'm going to do is snip this off and just pull through. Whoops. Just like that. Okay. And so I'm going to begin just a little bit before there. And I'm not putting a slip knot on my hook this time. I do this periodically. So I'm just going to pull it through just like that. I'm going to throw the tail over to that side. And I'm just going to chain one. Just like that. Okay. Now back into that same stitch, I'm going to just place a single crochet. So that chain one was just to give us a little bit of height. Just like that. So we're going to do another single crochet into the next stitch. So this is where we slip stitched. Okay, and this is the section where we focus on the circle technique with increases throughout. So in round 18, I did 16 stitches and then the increase. So this is now round 19. So now what we're going to do, even though we're using single crochet stitches, we are going to crochet 17 stitches and then place our increase. Okay, so I'm just going to try and work over this tail here. What I'm going to do for this round actually is I'm going to begin with the increase. So I'm going to go right into the very next stitch there. So that's the slip stitch knot. I'm going to insert my hook and single crochet, and then right back into that same stitch I'm going to single crochet again, and that's going to give us our first increase. Okay, and now I'm just going to continue placing one single crochet into each stitch for 17 stitches before my next increase. Okay, just like that. Oh, sorry guys, I know it's white background and white yarn, so hopefully you can see that. So see, it's going to just create a very, very subtle detail. Okay, so that's all you're going to do for round 19. So you're going to do 17 stitches, increase, 17 stitches, increase until you get to that stitch marker. And then remember, it's just 17 straight stitches across until you get to the next stitch marker. And then we are working on the next rounded side. So you can see here, it's really increased in size. And then when you get to the other side, this is where the other stitch marker is, you'll simply place one single crochet into each until you get to the beginning again. So then what you're going to do is you're just going to slip stitch to join, snip your yarn, and then we're going to go back to using the Fiesta colored yarn. And I'll meet you back here when we're ready to do that. Okay, so I have now completed round 19 and I'm just going to slip stitch to join into the very first single crochet. And then I'm going to chain and snip my yarn. Okay, so I'm just going to smooth out my, so your work is looking something like this. So you've got that white little trim here, which is going to create this nice little detail. So let's now go on to a round 20. We've got 2 more rounds after that to finish off our border, and then our oval placemat will be complete. Okay, for round number 20, we're going to reintroduce our orange color here. So just going to place a slip knot on my hook for that. And now we're going to pick up right where you can see where that seam is there. So I'm just going to insert my hook right there. And that is the beginning part of our rounded section. So I'm just going to pull that through. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to single crochet. Just like that. I'm actually going to try and work over both of these tails here. So I'm going to go back to working the linked double crochet stitch. So we began with an increase the last time, so I'm not going to begin with an increase this time. So for this round, round number 20, we are going to crochet 18 stitches before we do the next increase. So with each round, you're going to increase the number of stitches between each increase. So I'm just going to continue now with the linked double crochet. Now I just done a single crochet, so I need to build up my height. So I'm going to chain an additional 1. So this single crochet and chain 1 is not going to count. I'm going to insert my hook into that loop right there, pull through, and then go right back into the same stitch and then pull through. Okay, and then resolve it as usual. Pull through the first 2, pull through the next 2. Okay, so there's our first linked double crochet stitch. So I'm going to continue to do 17 more and then place my next increase. So that's what I'm going to do for this rounded section, and then I'm going to continue the round as I've been continuing before with the increase technique. So finish round number 20, and then we're going to talk about that lacy border. Okay, I've completed round 20, and now you can really see that white detail come through. So subtle and so lovely. So now we're going to go on to round 21, where we're going to work this lacy detail into our border. And so we're going to use the V-stitch actually. So we're going to begin this next round by chaining 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this will count as a double crochet and a chain 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the very same stitch we slip stitched into, and we're going to place just a regular double crochet. Because we are working the V-stitch, we are not going to be using the linked double crochet because of the lacy nature. Okay, so there's our first V-stitch. And that is what we're going to do for this complete round. We still want to pay attention to the fact that when we're in the round section as opposed to when we're in the straight section. Look at how short it is now. Okay, so we want to be aware that we still have to place an increase every now and again. So how we're going to work this V-stitch here is we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and into the 3rd stitch we'll place the next V-stitch. So we have 1, 2, into the 3rd, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Okay, just like that. See, 2 V's. I'm going to do that again. So we're going to skip 1, 2, and into the third. We're going to double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet back into the same stitch. That's what gives us that V stitch. So now you can see it's creating that lovely lacy edge there. Now, what we want to remember is every time we've completed 6 V stitches, into the 7th V stitch, we're going to add a little increase. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish the next 3 V stitches here, and then I'm going to show you what's going to happen into the 7th V stitch. Okay, I've finished 6 V stitches. Now I'm going to create the 7th V stitch. So I'm going to skip 1, 2, into the 3rd stitch I'm going to place a double crochet. And now I'm going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and then go back into that same stitch. So normally for a V stitch we chain 1, but every 7th V I want to place 2 chains in there, and that will represent our stitch increase. And as usual, that's going to slowly help you navigate around the round edge of each side. So V stitch, every 7th V, you're going to place 2 chains all the way around. Once you get to your first stitch marker, you're just going to continue with the regular V stitches. Now there's 17 stitches across here, and 17 divided by 3 doesn't give us a perfect number. So you will most likely have to work into the next stitch beyond the stitch marker. It's not the end of the world. What you want to do now is follow the V stitch pattern. So everything is happening into every 3rd stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on, and then I'm going to meet up with you once you're coming up to your stitch marker section here with the 17 stitches, just to kind of talk you through. If you're a little bit newer, if you're experienced, then you can just go ahead, finish your round, and I'll meet up with you at the end. Okay, so I've come up to my stitch marker there, and one of the V's after my increases fit perfectly there. So then every 3rd stitch I placed a V stitch. Now I'm coming up to the next stitch marker, and you can see I have 1, 2. Not going to worry about it. I'm actually just going to go into the 3rd as usual. Insert my hook and place that V stitch. Chain 1 and V. Okay. In fact, I can now take these stitch markers out because for our last round, we do not have to worry about this. So we'll just take that out. And so now I'm on to the rounded side on the other side of the placemat. So I'm just going to follow what I was doing before. After every 6th V stitch into the 7th V stitch, I'm going to place that extra chain. So that's just going to go as usual. And then I'm just going to finish up with my V stitches to the end. And I will meet up with you there just in case there's an extra stitch left over to take you through it. Okay? Okay, I'm just at the very end of round 21. So we have 2 stitches left, and our 3rd one is right here, which is our next V stitch. So actually it worked out perfectly. So what we're going to do is we're just going to find the 3rd chain up, which is right there. We're going to insert our hook, and all we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch to join. Just like that. So round 21 is complete, and we've got one more round to go. Look at that. So you've got that delicate white detail, and then you've got this little lacy border. Now just to solidify the border, we're going to do 1 round of single crochet stitches just to kind of give this an overall nice finish. Okay, so all we're going to do here is we are going to just go into the chain space, and we are going to single crochet just like that. And we're going to do it again into that chain space. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into, see how there's a stitch right there on the right side of the V? We're just going to single crochet into there. Then into the chain space, we single crochet once, single crochet twice, and then into the next stitch, the right of the V, we place another one. So it takes 3 stitches to create a V-stitch. So we just want to make sure that we're going to replenish those stitches. So that's why I took out the stitch markers. This last round, we're not going to worry about increasing at all. We're just going to try to keep the stitch count nice and even. Okay. And then when we get to our 7th V-stitch, anytime we see a V-stitch with 2 chains in it, we're going to place an extra single crochet. So let me just finish these V-stitches here. I'm going to place 2 single crochets into the space, just keeping it nice and easy, and then into the first stitch of the V, I'll place my 3rd. I'm going to do that all the way down until I see that first increase V-stitch, which is going to be right there. So I have 2 more to go. Single crochet into the V. And then again, 1, 2, and single crochet. So because this V-stitch has an increase in it, we want to keep the stitch count the same. We're going to continue as usual, place 1, 2 single crochets, and now we're going to place a single crochet into the left side, that left double crochet there, so that we account for that increase. And then we just go into the stitch on the right as usual and place 2 single crochets, and then we skip over to the next V and do that again. So that's the only difference. Anytime you come across that V stitch that has 2 chains, you're just going to make sure that you also single crochet into the left leg there. And that's it. And that's going to give us our final edge to our border. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish mine. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to slip stitch to join at the beginning, snip my yarn, and our autumn placemat will be complete. Can't wait. Okay guys, my placemat is complete. So I finished my border here of single crochet stitches. And I just love how those V-stitches just created a little extra fine detail. So I did 22 rounds in total. And so my placemat looks like this. And you would just do this, replicate it as many times as you like to create however many placemats you would like. Now, I've gone ahead and done a second one. So I have a set of 2. And I am so happy with how that came out. This will be perfect for a Thanksgiving place setting or any fall themed tablescape. I mean, it doesn't have to be for fall, but I just love how this color just lends itself so beautifully to autumn. So I hope you found this very fun, easy, interesting. I know some of you were very curious about creating the oval shape. So I wanted it to be easy enough to kind of get the concept, but just give you a little bit of a finer stitch like the linked double crochet, just to add a little bit of interest there. Now, if you have any further questions, you know you can always drop them for me in the comment box down below, or you can reach me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. I know many of you like to send me direct emails, which is fantastic. I love getting messages from you guys, and I'm always very happy to answer any questions or help you with any issues that you may have. Now, don't forget to visit me on the website at crochetcrafty.com, where you'll find extra information on many of the tutorial projects that we've worked on. We've got bonus tools for you, like sizing charts and all kinds of really great tools for you. Also, don't forget to sign up for my monthly newsletter. It's absolutely free, and I gift you a free written pattern every month just as a thank you for coming and hanging out with me. Now, if you're new here and you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've enjoyed hanging out with us, make sure to press that subscribe button. Come hang out with me every Wednesday morning when I upload a brand new tutorial. And by the way, if you like this particular project, make sure to give me a thumbs up, and that way I'll know to keep making more projects like this. And by the way, keep your suggestions coming. Leave them for me in the comment box, or send me an email, or send me a DM. You can find me on the socials on Facebook and Instagram at The Stitch Sessions. And as always, thank you for continuing to support the channel and to support my crochet journey and helping me share my love of crochet with you guys in all the ways that you have and continue to do so. By subscribing, by commenting, by liking and sharing the videos, and also those of you that have gone above and beyond and given me a little extra support with the thanks button. Every little bit counts, and I so appreciate it. So guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. Have fun creating your autumn oval placemats, and as always, take very good care of yourselves, and I will see you in next week's session. Bye-bye.